welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to talk about those uncomfortable questions we just gotta ask. I stumbled upon this article this morning and immediately my eyes widened and I thought, I need to go make a podcast on this. So I will link the article, obviously, in the description below. Before we dive in, I just want to do my due diligence and remind everybody about my Patreon. You can find me at patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. And with my Patreon, you will get access to this podcast an entire week early. You will get grief affirmations in your mailbox twice a week, as well as a monthly check-in, and hopefully some other events coming up here pretty soon with some Q&As, and there's a community there. You can comment in Patreon, you can have chats in Patreon, you can talk about the show episodes and meet each other, and yeah, it's a great little community. All right, and with that, we're going to dive right on in. So yeah, this article is from the Amateur's Guide to Death and Dying, which is one of my favorite blogs. I follow they upload like pretty much every day, and they just have the best content. So I always recommend going over and checking out that blog if you are so inclined. But the article I saw was actually from a few days ago, and the title is 6 Uncomfortable but Necessary Questions to Ask Your Older Parents. So I had an episode not too long ago on working with your aging parents, how to care for them, how to care for yourself, all of that good stuff. So feel free to check that out. But this one was just so near and dear to my heart because all I do is help people have these difficult conversations. And I help people navigate this in my monthly death cafes as well. I have a death cafe once a month in person, but I'm also holding virtual ones if you're ever interested. You can find information on my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com. But a lot of people come in with these type of questions. They're like, how do I help my parents do this, or myself, get these things in order? And a lot of times people are uncomfortable even having these conversations, which is such a great place for me to have my death cafes, because it's a safe space for people to ask these uncomfortable questions, because it's not like you can go to your next door neighbor. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know your relationship, but it's difficult to just talk to sometimes even your best friend, let alone your family, about some of these conversations because they're considered taboo. And God, I wish they weren't. But I don't run the world. If I did, it would be a very different place with lots of rainbows. Okay, so let's get into our 6 questions. As I said, these topics tend to be taboo and they're definitely uncomfortable, and it's really tempting to just avoid them altogether. But I can never impress enough just how important it is to have these conversations while you can. I have just heard so many horror stories in my line of work of people not knowing what to do, where to go when their loved one dies. They don't know, because their loved one had nothing in place. They had no plans. I don't know if they want to be buried or cremated. I don't know if they have a family plot. I don't know. You have to have these conversations while you can. And there are so many ways to start this. And one of the beautiful things I offer in my services is to help you have these conversations with your family. So I'm always happy to help you navigate this, or any other end-of-life doula out there would be happy to help you have these conversations with your family if you need, or give you guidance or advice on how to start this, okay? But let's just dive into the questions now. Question number 1, to ask your older parents, or older, it doesn't have to be your parents, older relatives, friends, family, whoever, do you have an up-to-date advance directive packet? So I harp on that constantly. You have to have your advance directives together, living will, final will, power of attorneys, all of that. Please have that together. But it's one thing to have that. You have to keep it up to date. Every few years, they recommend about once every 5 years to look at them and reevaluate, make sure everything is still correct and still necessary. So maybe they have one, but they wrote that will 30 years ago when you were under 18. So you need to keep these up to date. So the crux of that question is, do you have up-to-date advance directive cares? I, again, can never never emphasize enough just how important it is to have that paperwork together. That's the obvious one. So we'll just move on to the next one from there. The next question is, have you thought about what you want the end of your life to look like? And if so, can you tell me what you're envisioning? This is something I do as an end-of-life doula when somebody has a terminal diagnosis or are entering hospice care. But this is something you can talk to your family members or friends about now as far as what they want their end of life to look like. Do they really want to avoid being in a nursing home? Most people will say they do. Do they really want to be in a different place? Do they want to live somewhere else? Do they want to be with a specific family member? Do they want to be in a nursing home? Do they already have something planned? If they already prepaid something? These are questions you need to be asking your family members. Who do you want around? Who do you not want around? Maybe they have an estranged family member they really don't want present. I've seen that many times. So these are things you can know and plan out ahead of time. I like to have written out a death plan for my clients. And this is something you can do too with just your family members. See what they're envisioning. And if they have no idea, now's the time to start planning that. And again, if you don't know how to have these conversations, or you don't understand or don't know how to write out a death plan or end of life plan, and you want some guidance, you can contact me or any death doula, really. And they can help you with these. All right, next question. This is so important. What do you expect of me and your other kids as you approach your dying season? So, and this is something they may not have thought about. And that's a lot. A lot of these questions are not necessarily just for you, but for them as well. Because if they haven't thought of these yet, this is where they need to start thinking about it. But what do you, and this is a conversation I need to have with my parents. Anybody who's listened to my podcast for more than 5 minutes knows that my brother passed away. So I'm the only child left. I do have a niece and nephews. They have grandkids. So it's not like I'm all alone in this. But I don't know exactly what they're expecting from me. Are they expecting me to drop everything and just, 24-hour care, give up my whole life and be with them 24/7? Spoiler, I don't think I can do that. But, or are they expecting me to call a certain person to manage that? Maybe your loved one already has a death doula in mind, or somebody they have in mind to help manage their care. And they're just expecting you to call them and just be son, daughter, brother, sister, whatever. So what are their expectations? I'm willing to bet a lot of times parents will be like, I don't want you to have to worry about me. I don't want you to lose your job over me. I'm just echoing what I know I can hear my parents saying to me. But you don't know what their expectations are until you ask them. They may not know what their expectations are yet. So good question to ask. All right, number 4. This is a great conversation I've already had with my mother multiple times, and we still work on from time to time when I'm at their house, which is, what do you want us to do with your belongings after you're gone? There's certain things I need to, figure out, like, do they want to keep their wedding rings with them, with their ashes or whatever. But think of specific items, like especially things like wedding rings, certain paperwork, things like their birth certificates. I think we have some birth certificates from some of my ancestors, like 2-3 generations back, which is just kind of a cute thing to have. Like paperwork, things like that, or physical items. Do they have heirlooms in their house? Do they have something in mind already where they want those to go? I know there are a couple specific items my mom wants to go to certain places, and that's fine. I'm glad I know that now, so that I don't have to worry about that when they're gone. Like, oh, well, what do I do with great grandma's dishes? Or what do I do with this chair? Most of these things, mom has, if it's super important, she's told me about already. And my dad's been very heavily involved in the Scouts for pretty much his entire life. And he has quite the collection of Boy Scout items. And he wants me to make sure those go back to the Scouts. And I will absolutely do that for him. I've actually heard of people having not necessarily a party, but like a gathering in their house when somebody's getting older. And they go around and they put sticky notes on the bottom of things like, Mom, I want to make sure I get this vase when you go. And Mom's like, great, it's yours. Put a note on the bottom of it. Or take photos of things and have a catalog. Be like, Sister Susie gets this dining set, and, your second cousin really always loved this dresser. So they get, things like that. It seems sick, but I know when unexpected deaths have happened, nobody knows what to do with their belongings. And a lot of times they end up all getting donated to Salvation Army or a thrift store. And maybe they had something in mind for a particular item. So make sure you know where their physical items are going. Number 5, another huge important one. What do you want to happen to your body? Do they want cremated? Do they want buried? Do they want composted? Do they want to be in a specific grave site? Do they have a plot purchased already? Do they want a headstone? Do they want a basic marker? Like, there are a million questions you can ask, but I would say overall, most important question to ask is burial, cremation, or something else. Because, there are more and more options are coming about all the time, which is amazing and I love it. Green burial, regular burial. Do they really, really want to be embalmed and put in a casket with a vault and, and a mausoleum? And that's their choice. Whatever they choose, you have to respect. But, give them their options if they don't know and make out a plan. I'm hoping, and I encourage people to pre-purchase their funeral and or burial things before they go. Have that already paid for so your kids don't have to worry about it. If you can't, you can't. That's fine. But I would deeply encourage you to at least have that decision written down somewhere. And these are things that can go in your final will, by the way. All the way back to question 1 with those advance directives. All right. And last question. If you die before your spouse, what resources are available to help them as they age? That's another big one, especially if you have parents like mine who were, high school sweethearts, whatever, and they've been together since childhood. They've known nobody else. There is a very good chance that one of them will go before the other and one will be left without their partner. This is a very, very, very difficult field to navigate. And they're going to be very lonely and very scared and very sad. Obviously, they're going to be grieving very hard. So I always kind of stress, like, if I were to go before my husband, I want him to find someone else to help take care of him and to love him and everything. But I don't know that he would. But these are conversations you can have, like, Mom, if Dad dies before you, what can I do for you? What do you want in place for you? Or, vice versa. Because they may have something in mind. They might say, this group of friends can really help out, reach out to them, things like that. Make sure they're still doing XYZ, make sure they're still talking to these folks, make sure they're still going to their house of worship, whatever it is. What can we do? What resources are available to help? Okay, that's it. Those are the 6 big questions. There are many more questions you can and should ask your older family members as they're aging. Again, these conversations are tricky. They're difficult. And if you need help, reach out to someone like me or another professional in this area to help navigate those conversations. It's going to be weird. Okay, there's no magic way to just make it not weird. Hopefully you have a close enough relationship with whoever you're speaking to that it's not that weird, but it might be. But you need to know these things. You need to have these conversations. And if you keep waiting for the right time, it's never going to come. You need to just find a time when you can have these. Set aside a specific day. Say, like, Mom, look, I need to ask a whole lot of questions about what you want at the end of your life and after, and we need to sit down and talk about it. Let's get coffee or have wine. I mean, I would never tell people they should drink or not drink alcohol. But, sometimes having a glass of wine makes conversations a little easier. Take Mom out for a glass of wine and have these conversations. Say, let's get together and bake cookies. And while we're baking cookies, let's have these conversations. If you approach your parents and they push back, like, I don't want to talk about this. We don't need to talk about this. First of all, don't press them. Don't make them feel bad. Don't yell at them and say, yes, we do. Honor that and appreciate that and just let them know, not knowing the answers to these questions is a very large burden for me. And it makes things more difficult, more complex for me. And I don't feel comfortable with that. I want to honor you and give you and respect you and your wishes. So it's a good way to broach that. Just make sure they understand that you're not doing it because you want them to die. You're not hoping they die, but you are aware that they will, and things will have to be taken care of. So, and if, they're not, you're left alone to guess all that. So just let them know that overall you're respecting and honoring their wishes. Okay? That would be my number one advice. All right. So that is it. Again, I'll link that article in the description. And now it is time for the Death Deck. Woo! So I'm going to shuffle the cards. I swear every time I do this, I drop one. Every stinking time. All right. Well, then I'll just read the one I dropped. In your final days, would you pray or meditate? A, full throttle prayer all the time. B, massive mindful meditation. C, let's just see what's on TV. For myself, it'd be a little combination of all three, honestly. I know that feels like a cop-out answer, but yeah, I would say some prayers. I wouldn't be like nonstop, nonstop praying. I would want to do other things as well. But yeah, I would definitely get some meditation in there as well, which is kind of just another form of prayer for myself. But you know what? Sometimes I want to distract myself. Let's just turn the TV on and not think about it for a minute. And that's okay. All of those are perfectly acceptable answers. I would love to hear what your answer is to that question. You can find me on the socials. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Nikki the Death Doula. That's Nikki. Leave a comment in my posts about this episode and let me know what your thoughts are, what your answer to that question would be. And if you have suggestions for my show, if you have thoughts or ideas, or if you'd like to be a guest on my show to share your story of grief and loss, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'd be happy to have you on. And with that, I hope you have an absolutely lovely week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours, your feelings are valid, and grief doesn't always have to suck.